Tonight, lest we forget, from Port Pirie to Broken Hill, Whyalla, Port Augusta and Port Lincoln, our region pays its respects this Anzac Day, honouring those who served for our great nation.
This is Southern Cross News with Fraser Goldsworthy.
Good evening. Thousands have gathered across our region this Wednesday to mark Anzac Day. This year's event's even more significant as the 5-year commemoration of the centenary of World War I comes to an end. We begin our coverage tonight in Whyalla, where rain held off as the community gathered for the traditional dawn service.
As the sun rose, Whyalla residents gathered to pay respect to those who'd served our nation. A large crowd pooling at the gates of Memorial Oval paused to remember and give thanks for the sacrifices made.
At the going down the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. I loved the crowd. I could see it when I was standing up on the dais. I can see how many people we had. I reckon there was at least 200, maybe 250 there.
Commemorations began the night before, with local youth holding a 12-hour vigil at the gates beginning at 6 p.m. Armed Forces cadets then took over this morning, with all proud to take part in such a special day.
Very privileged, actually. It's a real good experience for the youth of Whyalla.
Joining the cadets basically fired my fuel for enjoying this type of stuff.
It was a similar scene in Port Pirie, where eerie skies were revealed at the town's dawn services, with locals gathering to reflect on the coming 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Port Augusta residents also marking the day with a service, reflecting on the deeds of past men and women.
We talked about some horrific times there, but also some great camaraderie.
And as the number of surviving veterans declines, the youth of the region are ensuring this day remains sacred. Large numbers of children attended all services with their parents and grandparents and laid wreaths. The local RSL pleased with the trend.
I want the kids to know about Anzac Day, and it's good for the parents to come up that early to bring their kids for the service.
John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Commemorating the efforts of diggers past and present, crowds gathered in Port Lincoln for 2 Anzac services. This year's events included 2 unique guests taking part in honouring those who gave their lives during battle.
Young and old, sporting medals of bravery for their country.
And on this day, let us remember those people who live in the reality of war each day, even still.
Anzac Day for me is a mixed emotions. It's a celebration of being with friends and sharing memories, and it's also sadness at those who haven't returned.
Participating in the Port Lincoln dawn service for the first time, American chaplain Robert Dunn led the crowd in prayer.
A time to grieve and a time to dance. As a Yank, it was a privilege to be involved today and to present my thoughts on it from my perspective. There's nothing like it that I've ever experienced anywhere else in the world like Anzac Day.
This year's crowd featured all ages, with many applauding the presence of the town's younger generation coming out to honour those who served and who continue to serve.
The tradition of Anzac will continue to live on in them.
A lot of people have put a lot on the line to keep us having such a good life how we are, and I myself want to return that.
The superb weather provided for a beautiful dawn service here in Port Lincoln this morning. More than 1,000 people attended the service, where a special guest performed a very touching Waltzing Matilda.
Oh, come a waltzing Matilda with me.
And this year we had Kevin Bloody Wilson come and do it, and it was quite a moving event. Yes, there was hardly a dry eye in the place.
I just feel it's something I can add and feel a part of the community.
In Broken Hill, more than 1,000 people attended the local dawn service, and while it threatened to rain, the heavens held off for those to reflect on the day. Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
For those who missed the dawn services, many chose to pay their respects to the Anzacs during parades from Port Lincoln to Broken Hill. Garth Burley joins us, and Garth, Port Augusta was just one of many communities holding a parade today.
That's right, Fraser. A number of people across regional South Australia and New South Wales line the streets to watch veterans, schools and community groups take part in a number of parades and to pay tribute to the soldiers that fought so hard for our country. In Port Lincoln, the Light Horse Regiment set the pace of the parade. Following closely, the vehicles that once carried soldiers around the battlefront now carrying them to a warm and welcoming reception.
I'm in the march each year, but I ride in the Jeep for today.
93-year-old Reg uses the special occasion to reflect on his fallen comrades of World War II.
Some didn't return, and so it's just memories for them.
Among the community groups involved was the City Band. In Whyalla, it was a similar affair. A large gathering of ex-veterans gave onlookers the opportunity to see the members of their community who bravely gave their service to the country. Young and old residents paraded proudly, wearing their own legacy as well as the legacy of their loved ones. As the Army cadets marched behind the soldiers of old, the public celebrated the faces of those next in waiting. In Port Augusta, the grave sacrifices of our past soldiers hasn't been lost on the new guard.
I'm very grateful to be able to pay my respects today. Those who are willing to, those who are, and those who have, we're just proud.
What they've done hasn't been forgotten. It's always going to be with us and always going to push us forward to do better and bigger things.
While hundreds of people gathered here for a parade in Port Augusta, a record number of people turned out for Port Pirie's Anzac Parade. Rachel Nell was there.
It keeps the people remembering the past, respect the past, but you've got to go forwards.
Hundreds of locals gathering side by side, parading down Memorial Drive in memory of their loved ones.
My grandfather was in the First World War, my father was in the Second World War, and I served in Vietnam.
Places like Warnertown, Wandera, Port Pirie itself, who decided to volunteer and be part of the fighting. Unfortunately, a lot of those people didn't come back.
To me, we're unique. We're Pirie people.
Hundreds of young people lining Memorial Drive, honouring more than a century of Anzac spirit and those who served and have sacrificed for our country. Organisers say this year's parade is one of the largest in Port Pirie's history.
It seems to be that there's more and more people getting involved, and I think that's really important, not only to remember those people that are gone, but to remember the service of those people that have served our country.
You have a really deep feeling touched on, and it seems to be getting larger each year.
Broken Hill also paid tributes to our diggers, marching to the sound of bagpipes through the Silver City. Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
And there was plenty more happening well into the day following the traditional Anzac services, gunfire breakfasts, old-fashioned two-up and even local footy made for a chock-a-block day across the Spencer Gulf.
It's a day when we honour the sacrifice our men and women made on the battlefield, but it's also a time to celebrate their life and legacy.
Well, in Broken Hill it seems to be very, very important, and as you see here, everyone stops for Anzac Day.
It's very important, like they should definitely know the story, like we got told when we were younger the story, so it needs to be passed down.
I even got one of my great-grandsons came from Mildura to be here with me today.
Following the morning services, veterans at RSLs across all towns shared a gunfire breakfast.
Everything's fine, it was a milk.
Local musician Graham Stevenson entertained Whyalla crowds. At Broken Hill's Garden of Remembrance, a new plaque was unveiled honouring the past and present legacy widows. That was followed by the 9 o'clock service. At midday, the 2018 Broken Hill footy season got underway, with Central and West squaring off in a hotly contested clash. Bowden McAllister, an up-and-coming Silver City musician, received the Gallipoli Foundation Fellowship, a grant that will go toward pursuing his passion for music.
It's a fantastic thing, very honoured to get it, probably going to go a long way.
And Port Lincoln held a very special screening of Gallipoli last night. Dozens flocked to the town's foreshore to watch the classic war film Under Starlight. And it wouldn't be Anzac Day without a few classic games of two-up.
Great turnout, and Anzac Day wouldn't happen if it wasn't for all the members of the RSL that have put in for it. to make today a very great day.
Patrick Reinke, Southern Cross News.
Do stay with us. After the break on Southern Cross News, we'll have the rest of the day's local stories. Researchers have launched a campaign to protect the state's iconic King George whiting stocks. They're asking for recreational anglers to donate fish frames to local tackle stores.
Protecting King George whiting in the southern Gulfs.
Fishing pressure appeared to be pushing those stocks in decline.
PIRSA is calling on recreational fishers to donate leftover King George whiting frames for research into the species.
Skeleton and the head and the guts intact if possible, and then they send them or drop them off to participating tackle shops or here at Sardi. We can access quite a lot of important biological information from that.
The idea is to work out where the fish eggs are being laid to help manage the species going forward.
Identify exactly where King George whiting spawn in the southern Gulfs and how important those spawning locations are to ensure that the stocks remain sustainable.
In Port Pirie, anglers can drop off their frames at Wardle Marine. A word of warning, PIRSA is only interested in whiting caught before the end of the month, with the annual spatial closure commencing on the 1st of May.
Ensure that those fish that are spawning in that area are successful in their spawning activity and help replenish the stocks, because that area is considered to be the engine room.
Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
The Eyre Peninsula has been given an insight into the region's energy future. The companies behind a green hydrogen plant tipped for the area presented its pitch to local residents.
Over the last couple of years, energy has been the topic of the town across parts of the Spencer Gulf, and now it's Port Lincoln's turn.
To make the general public aware of just the enormous opportunity we have for renewable energy in this region of the state, and just the opportunity more broadly for South Australia.
I just enjoy coming here and getting an update, and last year was fantastic, so I thought I'd come along again this year.
One speaker at the In the Zone Energy Summit who was of particular interest was Attilio Pigneri, the CEO of H2U, which will establish the recently announced green hydrogen plant on the Eyre Peninsula.
We took the opportunity to come and present the project that we've been announcing in February when we received funding from the South Australian government.
The leader of the hydrogen company provided insight as to when the venture will be up and running.
The plan is to initiate that commissioning in the first half of 2020 and then complete it by end of 2021. So the full commercial operation would be 2022, but all going well, should be turnkey in early 2020.
Hydrogen production is a big ticket item where we can just run electricity through water. So all these things we can do with abundant, low-cost, clean electricity.
What's our potential for the future? It's sounding very, very promising.
Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
In the news ahead, we'll check the region's fuel prices, plus turning junk to funk, the fundraiser for a local special school. The details next. Mobile Muster and AgSafe's ChemClear have joined forces to help people living in rural areas rid their homes of any e-waste. The program's aimed at reducing the 1.7 million unused mobile phones lying around in regional homes. A special recycling truck will be provided to help people dispose of their old devices, as well as any unwanted agricultural chemicals. Wowler's Junk to Funk is back for another year to raise funds for the local special education school. Locals with an eye for fashion can now enter the event, with proceeds going toward new equipment for students.
It's Wowler's biggest fashion event, with a slight twist. Junk to Funk sees local teams design clothing using reusable materials to create the next big thing in fashion.
The teams get together and they create outfits out of recycled and repurposed materials, and what they come up with is really quite fantastic and quite glamorous.
The event will return in August for an 8th edition, held at the Westlands Hotel. It raises funds for the Wowler Special School to help bolster the equipment that's on offer.
A couple of us mums decided that we'd raise some money for the Special Education Centre so that they could get some really good facilities.
This year's aim is to help the school purchase some new outdoor tools.
More outdoor equipment to complement what's already in the new facility at the school.
Registrations will open on May 6 for 5 different categories. In between, the teams are urged to get their creative hats on and start designing a frock that'll steal the show.
You know, we've put a lot of money into the school. We've got a lot of different resources that really benefit the kids with their special needs.
You can find the registration details on our Facebook page. John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Stay with us. After the break, we'll have all the local weather with Amy. And Amy, the cooler temperatures seem to hang around as the Spencer Gulf commemorated Anzac Day.
That's right, Fraser. It was a milder day as we paid our respects to Australia's servicemen and women. And I'll have the forecast for the coming days next.
Welcome back. Before we head to the weather, let's take a look at the region's fuel prices. To unleaded, it's not good news for most areas. We're seeing red in Port Lincoln, Whyalla, Port Augusta, Port Pirie, Kadina and Broken Hill. Adelaide's the only place to see a drop, and quite a significant one too, down from $1.50. And for diesel, a bit of a mixed bag, down a couple of cents in Port Lincoln, up nearly 4 in Whyalla, down only slightly in Port Augusta. But if you're in Port Pirie, Kadina, Broken Hill or Adelaide, it'd pay to shop around. Now, just a reminder, these figures reflect the average price of each regional centre, not any one particular outlet. If you do know of a spot that's cheaper though, let us know on our Facebook page. Here's the weather now with Amy.
Thanks, Fraser. Temperatures sat in the high 20s in all centres as we paid our respects today. Port Augusta and Broken Hill sat in the high 20s, 24 the top in Whyalla and Port Pirie. Taking a look at the satellite, and a cold front passing over will trigger showers and thunderstorms, mainly over the central and southern parts of the state. Clear skies in the far west as high pressure builds. If you have plans to spend the last few days of school holidays on the waters tomorrow, southeasterly winds will pick up to 20 knots, seas will reach 1 metre, sunrise is at 6:49 while sunset is at 5:45. Once again, before tomorrow's forecast, a big thanks to Tori, who sent in this stunning photo overlooking the wharf at Port Pirie. And remember, we'd love to see your weather snaps too, and you can email them to localnews@sca.com.au. Looking at tomorrow's temperatures, and maximums won't go higher than the mid-20s. Showers will clear in Whyalla, 22 the predicted top there. Port Augusta, Woodna and Port Pirie will only be a few degrees warmer. Meanwhile, temperatures in all other districts will range in the low to mid-20s. Mostly sunny days ahead into the weekend in Port Lincoln. Similar conditions in Cleve with maximums sitting in the low 20s. However, it will be slightly warmer in Woodna, reaching 26 over the weekend. As previously mentioned, those showers predicted in Whyalla are set to clear by Friday, with a high of 24 on Saturday and Sunday. Maximums in Port Augusta will sit in the high 20s over the coming days, while Kadina will settle into those milder days with 25 on Sunday. Sunny days are expected in Port Pirie with tops of 26. Clare will only be a little cooler, reaching only 22, and it is cooling down also in Broken Hill. However, it is forecasted to remain mostly sunny with tops in the low 20s. So after another year of Anzac commemorations, it's shaping up to be a fine weekend around the Spencer Gulf, and lest we forget, Fraser.
Thanks, Amy, and that's our Anzac Day edition of Southern Cross News. Thank you for joining us. I will have some updates later. Until then, though, enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.